The Coalition of Texans with Disabilities, Raise Your Voice 2022, Interim Charges and Texas Legislature Online, recorded May 16th, 2022.
Hey, welcome everybody. I'm Dennis Borrell with the Coalition of Texans with Disabilities. So my audio description is I have gray hair, gray beard, wearing a gray jacket. So that means I'm like, aging rapidly right before your eyes. This is our first kickoff Raise Your Voice. We're going to be doing quite a few this year. In fact, we're figuring about 2 times a month. And before I talk a little bit about that, I wanted to thank those of you who were with us last year. And, we did some tracking, and believe it or not, over 3,600 emails were generated by the people on Raise Your Voice roundtables that went to 93 different legislators on issues of interest. That matters. Make no mistake about it. Communicating to our legislators is one of the biggest reasons we do this, and we hope to make it easy for you. And you know what? Here's another awesome statistic. We would ask people if they took action in the last week when we said to make a phone call or email, and we tracked their response with a little poll. And incredible enough, 56% of people on our calls actually responded. That tells us a couple of other very good things, that maybe we're doing this right, that we're trying to make it pretty easy for you to raise your voice to your legislators, and also that it's getting through it, and also that you're taking the time to do it. That's really, really important. Make no mistake about it. Communication from the people of Texas does matter. And I guarantee you that when Jace or Jolene or Jen or I in the Capitol, and we walk into a legislator's office and they say, oh yeah, we just got a couple of emails on that issue this very morning. That matters, folks. Thank you so much. So here at CTD, we are planning to work quite a bit this year. It's an interim year, which means no formal legislative session, but that doesn't mean the legislature is not working. They'll be doing some hearings and stuff, and we will be monitoring those, getting involved in those. And we will be advocating to legislators, state agency officials, staff members, all that. And it's all about setting the stage. Our colleague Jolene is going to talk about the interim charges and what opportunities that brings. So some of the subjects in our future Raise Your Voices this year: attendant wages, even more a crisis than it has been in the past, state budget issues, the Medicaid waivers wait list, which is unbelievably long in this state, special education issues, our children with disabilities, are they being fairly treated? What can we do to improve that? Medical cannabis, always a lot of interest in that from our folks, and many, many more.
But I guess just to kind of, first of all, my name is Jolene Sanders Foster, Advocacy Director. I am a white woman with long brown hair pulled back in a ponytail, a white t-shirt, and green rimmed glasses. So just to kind of piggyback on what Dennis was mentioning, interim charges. We know that interim charges often predict what could be the priorities for the next legislative session. And so some of those priorities that have been indicated by the Speaker of the House, as well as the Lieutenant Governor, some we saw coming, some we didn't. Some of those that we see are going to definitely be priorities: juvenile justice and criminal justice, the workforce, and specifically the teacher shortages. There are interim charges that are specific to COVID, teacher shortages, COVID recovery, as well as mental health supports for students post-COVID. Is that happening in schools? What do we need to do better? What's not happening? There are also going to be some interim charges around legislation that passed this last legislative session. SB 1716, which had to do with those special education, the supplemental special education services grants, And they'll continue to look at HB3, which was the school finance bill from the 86th legislature. There is a commission on school finance that's been meeting. They will be taking public comment. We know that special education finance is going to be a priority, as well as revisioning disciplinary alternative education plans or programs. And these are often areas where we see a lot of students with disabilities who are not being supported within the public schools, kind of getting funneled. And so that is a priority of the Lieutenant Governor, as well as childcare and child safety. There is a select committee that's going to be looking at child and youth safety. And finally, the 60 by 30 plan. And what that is it's a plan that's established by the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board that unfortunately doesn't take into consideration graduation and post-secondary success for students with disabilities. And we will be working to make sure that those students are also included and considered in that plan. One of the barriers we will have, or challenges I should say, is that the Lieutenant Governor has decided to combine Senate Ed and Higher Ed. So higher education is now going to be a subcommittee under Senate Education, and there's been some shakeup with the chairs and co-chairs. And we know, those are two big committees where we often have to elbow our way in to get the voices of people with disabilities heard. And so given the amount of work that those two committees do, being combined into one is going to be a challenge for us, but we feel confident that our partners and advocates like you will help us continue to elbow our way in to advocate for children and youth with disabilities. And so with that, I think I will go ahead and kick it over to Jen.
Thanks, Jolene. My name is Jennifer, and I am the Mental Health Peer Policy Fellow here at CTD. I will auto-describe myself. I am a very attractive white woman with glasses. I am in a Taylor Swift hoodie, and Miss Swift is also in a beautiful framed poster behind me, supervising me as always. So this next session, the Speaker of the House determined that they're going to be focusing on two major areas, and how fortunate for us. One is health, and one is the criminal justice system. CTD, we started last session doing some work in criminal justice realm. And I feel like we've made some strong progress in letting other criminal justice reform advocates know that we're here working on these issues. And what I discovered pretty quickly is the voices of people with disabilities and those with mental health concerns are often left out when we talk about conditions or policing. And, an interesting study came out recently that said that almost half of all people killed by police are people with disabilities. And that is extremely disturbing, and it shows and highlights the disparities for people with disabilities in the criminal justice system. So we're going to be looking at all things related to policing and the courts. We want to work a little bit more on supportive decision-making. It was a great bill that didn't get a whole lot of traction that we think is important, that people with IDD who go in the court system, that they and their attorneys and the judge understand that they're allowed to have a supportive decision maker present to help them make legal decisions. County jails, county juvenile justice centers, making sure those places have all the community and mental health supports, and that local mental health authorities and LIDAs work together to provide the type of supports that the county jails need in terms of care. And also working on a bill that we introduced last session about family liaisons. And we've seen a huge problem with county jails and their transparency in terms of medical. Oftentimes, a person that's in custody, their family doesn't know that they are at the hospital, that they have died, that they're not getting the treatment that they need. And it's been extremely difficult for advocates and family to get a hold of somebody at the jail and to get information. So we're going to work really hard on that bill again. So much criminal justice, you guys. I know we have limited time. working about issues within the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. Jolene mentioned higher education. Pell is going to be implemented for incarcerated students again. And I know as a person with lived experience, college programming for women and those with disabilities is very, very sparse and certainly not equitable in terms of what the men receive and able-bodied people receive in terms of higher education. So we've already started making plans with TDCJ to have those tough conversations and other organizations to make sure that Pell is implemented in a way that is accessible to everyone. Anything in regards to conditions, the heat, the plumbing, I think you've all heard on the news just how dire the conditions are in our prisons, and looking at medical recommended intensive supervision, which is compassionate parole. In 2019, 132 people were recommended, and these are people with disabilities, severe mental health, or severe physical health problems. 132 were recommended, 3 were voted on by the board, and none were approved by the governor. And that was a pattern that continues to be repeated. And we want to see people that are eligible and qualify for that to get home to their loved ones and get home to community care, which is far better than the medical care in TDCJ. And last but not least, the Texas Juvenile Justice Department. And I don't know any other way to say it, but it's a dumpster fire. It is an absolute chaos. And one of the bills that we worked on last session that was really important to us and remains important, and we're working with a federal coalition on this, is that no kids in cuffs, which means that, you know, if you were here in our last Raise Your Voices, you remember this bill that children as young as 10 can be handcuffed, hog-tied, zip-tied, sprayed with mace. And it's just extremely outrageous. And we know our kids with disabilities and mental health issues are disproportionately those kids that this is happening to. So we're working hard with stakeholders and other groups to get that bill passed where kids aren't handcuffed, and also working hard to close 5 of the state facilities within the Texas Juvenile Justice Department. They lack staffing. It's extremely dangerous. The conditions are horrible. And we want to see those kids in the community at facilities where they can get the care that they need. Hope that wasn't too much info at once, but it's so much that we're working on within the criminal justice world. And I think Chase is next. No, Dennis.
Actually, I'm going to be next, Jen.
Okay, do it, Dennis.
I think y'all gather that just in what, you know, Jolene's talk about education and Jen's about criminal justice, everything this state does impacts people with disabilities somewhere. And you know what happens? In almost every case, the disability community is on the short end of this deal, the short end of this stick. And, you know, this thing about children under 10 years old being thrown in cuffs and sprayed with mace, and that's legal. Okay. That ought to piss off anybody, if I may say so. Well, I'm going to talk about the community services. That's going to be my focus in the interim. I had the opportunity to attend an interim hearing recently. And one of the nice things about, you know, being around a while like myself is they actually ask me to come and talk to them. You better believe I'm going to take those opportunities. And I talked to them about the wait list and Medicaid waivers, which in the best case scenario, if you put your name on the wait list today, it's 27 years before your name gets to the top of the list. Best case scenario, okay? I also took that opportunity to talk about community attendance and the basically poverty wages, which is crushing our workforce. We're working hard on it. I heard ears opened there. And you know, one difference I've seen, I sense a little bit of movement in the Capitol. I mean, this committee agreed to take on an interim charge about wait lists, about community services. You know, being even willing to talk about it with the idea that it's going to set you up to do something in the regular session is big. It's really big. And some things come up that you can have impact on right away. And I'm going to tell you one of those. there was a bunch of federal money, federal COVID relief money that came into the state. Actually, there were several pieces that came in, but there was one that was actually a set aside for home and community-based services. This was Washington recognizing that those community workers and all that were not really addressed whenever there was essential workers. There was no hazard pay for them. They couldn't even get PPE for the most part. And when I say PPE, I mean masks and all that to protect themselves. So they sent a significant amount of money and said, you got to spend it on home and community-based services. And so the decision was made that, well, the best way to do that is give people a bonus. You know, they weren't going to change your wage, but still give them a bonus. And we kind of said, well, we'd rather you gave them a raise, but a bonus will put some dollars in their pocket. And we discovered at a hearing in April that the state had overlooked 130,000 community attendance for these bonuses. 130,000. We caught that error. We reached out to legislative offices, reached out to the governor's office, we reached out to media and scored 2 major media articles questioning the Health and Human Services Commission. Well, they corrected that last week. And those 130,000 community attendants are going to get those bonuses. So things happen in the interim immediately, but also it's a time to plan. With that, I'm going to pass it over to Chase.
All right, thank you, Dennis. My computer's not wanting to, there we go. Thank you all again for attending. My name is Chase Bearden. My audio description is I'm a white male wearing an aqua green shirt with the photo of the building that we have downtown of CTD in the background, mainly because my current room I'm in is a mess. So that way you won't have to stare at it. But thank you all for attending. And again, you know, echoing what everyone else said, interim charges are that kind of, you know, the tea leaves of what we may see next session. Of course, it's not everything. And a lot of times the things that we really want in there don't always make it. But I will say, and I know Dennis and I and others have talked about this, is that this go around on the House interim charges, we actually see more being focused on healthcare than we've seen in a long time. So it's a positive thing for us. It's giving us opportunities ahead of session to really sit down with legislators, try and bring them up to speed on a lot of the issues that we're facing, and not just wait until, you know, a hearing during session where all you get is 3 minutes to try and really persuade someone to shift when they're looking at thousands of bills already. So it's a really important time, and that's why we wanted to do this, because we will be sending out kind of you know, electronic notices saying, hey, here comes another interim charge hearing, you know, please chime in. We'll give you a link. At least on the House side, they're still allowing you to submit through email any of your remarks. The Senate is not, but, you know, at least gives us a voice where we can. And I know Dennis, when we did the attendant care one, we had a lot of people submit information back to them. So, you know, we really thank you all for that. 2 of the areas that I've been working on is voting and, of course, healthcare. On voting, they actually had an interim hearing last week. I unfortunately couldn't make it, and so I've been going back through watching it as I have time. It's about 2.5 hours. It's been archived, and I'll show y'all how to find that here in a minute. But a big part of that was looking at the election results following an election, determine the reasons for any delays, inaccuracies, and initial reporting. And I think we all saw this coming. We all knew that that was going to be looked at. Mainly, the legislature last session made so many changes to our election law in a very compressed time frame. Typically, everything's done during the regular session. That gives the Secretary of State's office time to go forward, create their guidance, send that out to the counties, and then they have time to prepare. There was a lot of changes made. I mean, tons. And it was dumped on the counties pretty much immediately. And as you all saw in the news, there was mix-ups between people not, signing the envelope correctly, or not even getting a voter registration form that was a current accurate one. And this ran from Democratic counties to Republican counties. I mean, there was a true rollout nightmare, I think, scenario when it came to getting people's votes counted. We had a historic amount of votes thrown out in this last election. And that's something we're trying to make sure doesn't happen when the general election comes around, the next one. So we are continuing to give input. We will send you opportunities on when you can, but having your stories and talking about it, it does make a difference. We are also continuing to work on making sure mail-in ballots are accessible for screen readers. It's still an uphill battle that we're fighting, but our hope is that we will get there sooner than later, and at least have it in some counties by the next general. That being said, we are also working towards a hearing coming up on the Health Select Committee that's going to focus on medications and healthcare. And that's coming up, I believe, August 4th. And that's an area that we've spent a lot of time working on over the last few years, mainly for people with commercial insurance, separating those that are on Medicaid when it comes to prescription medications, because that's a different program. But on the commercial side, there are actually less protections than what there is on the Medicaid side. So things we're working on is non-medical switching and making sure that a person who is stable on their medication can continue to be on that medication from year to year without having changes by the insurance company at the last minute, or put into a higher category that you can't afford. We're also looking at copay accumulators and making sure that no matter how you fund paying for your medication, you're able to get that off of your deductible, so that way you're not paying double by the end of the year and the insurance company's making out like a bandit on that. So we're working in those areas along with quite a few others that we'll focus on during that. And as that gets closer, we will let people know, that way they can submit out. One thing we did want to bring up, that we got a email before this started about an interim hearing that was in 2019, or supposed to be, and it was supposed to focus on the ADA at the Capitol, specifically looking at some of the issues, like some of the hearings, there is no closed captioning. You have to make requests every time. There is a lot of inaccessibility in the Capitol. At the end of the day, I don't even know if they ended up meeting. I can't remember, to be honest. But when COVID hit, I think that shut down almost everything then, and it probably has not been brought back up. So that's something we will have to go back and speak with the speaker's office and see if that's something they kept working on, or if that's something we can start back up. So we'll focus on that and try and get an answer for y'all on that, because I do know that it makes a big difference for people that are coming out that need the services. Next, we kind of wanted to give y'all a brief rundown of, let me bring up my screen, of how to use the TLO. So that way y'all can track yourselves.
Hey Chase, what's TLO?
I'm sorry, that's a great question. Texas Legislative Online. It is a website that the state runs that allows people to basically be able to see where bills are, get information on their legislators, And it also is kind of that public forum that lets people know when a committee hearing is coming up. And those are really useful because you can set it up so that you can actually get alerts. That way you're not having to check every day like we do sometimes. Let me see. Get share screen. Bring up TLO. And share. All right, so let me shrink that down.
And Chase, just FYI, I went ahead and put the link in the chat for folks
Perfect.
too.
Perfect. Thank you, Jolene. Yeah, and this is one of those websites that I would definitely put in your bookmarks. It's basically the fastest way to finding information or to find legislators or their staff. What we wanted to do is make sure everyone knew how to use it. I know some of y'all that are on here have been using this for years, but we didn't want to take that for granted and have people who didn't know how to actually use it or didn't know the advantages of having it. So the first thing I would suggest is after you get off today is go ahead and go to the website, bookmark it into your web browser. But it would be to come over to this portion right here where it says My TLO. And you click on it and you can create an account. And as you can see, I'm already logged in. And the benefits to having an account is that you can sign up for alerts. And this can be an alert for a bill during the session. So say there's a bill that and I see Sean's on about medical cannabis. You can easily put that in there, and anytime something is changing about that bill, you'll get an email telling you, hey, there's a hearing coming up in 3 days, or it's moved to the next step. That way you can be prepared to either send in testimony or go up to the Capitol or make calls if you need to. During an interim period like we're in now, one of the benefits is clicking on the committee notices. So if you go through here, there's about 18 committees that I kind of keep track of. And you'll notice there's a lot that aren't checked. I know Jolene has a lot of those checked, and she probably didn't have a lot of the ones checked I have checked. And Dennis, so we cover a lot of committees, but for me, it's really important to know when, appropriations on Article 2, where that's talking about the funds that we need for attendant care, business and industry, the constitutional rights and remedies, county affairs. So you can just go down and click the ones that you want to get information on. And it's a really helpful tool just because it keeps you informed on when those meetings are. And that way you can, participate at the highest level. Because if you miss a testimony or you miss a chance, it's always hard to make up for that. It really is trying to get people to show up as much as possible, because the more they hear it, the more it starts to sink in for them. On the regular page, one of the things that I always find important, if you don't want to sign up for a whole, and get emails from everything, you can always just come to this page, go to committee meetings, and on this top box up here, this is for the Texas House. Down here, you have the Texas Senate, and it's basically the same, except they have separate everything. Their calendars are different than the House. So you'll want to check both of them. And, the first thing I do is go to the committee meetings on the House. I usually look at it by date. So if there's a blue box, that means there is a committee meeting on that date at the Capitol somewhere. And all you have to do is click on it. And tomorrow, insurance will be meeting in the building. And let's see, Jolene, I believe you have one coming up. When is it?
Yeah, we have one coming up on May 24th.
Okay, so here it is. So on May 24th, there's in public education. All you have to do is you can click either one of these and it'll pop up and it'll give you what they're going to discuss. And this is all they can work on during that period. So you can read through it and see if this is something that, affects you or people around you. And if it is, you would scroll down. If you're on the House side, you would have the ability to submit electronic comments down here. Jolene, as an example, do you want to go through what this actual interim hearing is about, since y'all are going to participate in it? And then
Yeah, so Jen and I will actually be in Washington, DC, doing work at the federal level, but we are submitting comments on this. These are pieces of legislation that have previously passed in prior sessions. So you can see here it indicates 1525 and HB3, which, as I mentioned before, was from the 86th regular session relating to public school finance. And there was some stuff in there that was very specific to special education funding and full day pre-K, as well as bonuses to districts for graduating students with disabilities who are college, career, or military ready. Another one that I won't go through all of them, but 1716 was another one that I had previously mentioned, and that was the bill that created and the supplementary special education services funds that would allow up to $1,500 grant per child to access technology or other additional services. And then, of course, which is on everybody's mind and has been talked about since COVID, what is the impact on learning loss and mental health of students? And so, as you can see at the bottom, it will give you instructions on how to provide comment electronically. So even if you can't make it, and that's really great. Unfortunately, we don't have the same opportunity on the Senate side, but yeah, this is a very timely issue and opportunity.
And this is after clicking that link from that hearing notice. And Jolene, I take it y'all submitted through this instead of just sending it to the clerk. I mean,
Right.
basically y'all will be using the same thing we use. You just click that you certify and you fill out your information. It will ask you on what you're wanting to talk about. You click that, and then it allows you an area to type in your comments, and then just hit submit, and it takes care of it for you. It's kind of one-stop shop for this and makes it a lot easier. And these are looked at by the committee and by the clerks and the chair. So, it's definitely worth your time to tell your story, to say why you're running into certain issues, because if they don't hear it, then, at the end of the day, we're not going to get as far as we could. So going back to the main screen, a few other little options on here that can help you. If you ever want to watch the video broadcast, so the hearing is going to be tomorrow at 10 o'clock. All you have to do is come over here to where it says video broadcast. You have both the House and the Senate. If it's on the House side, you just click the House. And usually if there is something that is coming up that it's about to start, it will be listed on this page right here. And you're able to just click it. The screen will pop up and you can watch the whole hearing. Since I missed that voting hearing the other week, all I had to do is come over here, scroll to the bottom of this page, and you'll see committees right here. So you click that, and it will take you to all of the recent committees that have had any kind of meeting. And all you have to do is click elections, and you'll be able to watch it from the start to the beginning. And you can still, even if you miss your opportunity at that point, you can watch it and still write an email or send an email to those legislators. It won't be put into the notes of this committee hearing, but it will be addressed. So it's even worth it if you miss that, deadline of when it has to be in. But you can scroll down and see all the other hearings that have already taken place, and be able to go back and watch them if you need to. That can be a useful tool if you're just wanting to also, prepare on remarks that you want to send. It's very similar on the Senate side. Unfortunately, like we said, if you want to testify, you actually have to go in to testify on that. Dennis, Jolene, Jen, did I miss anything on here that y'all think would be important for people to look at?
If you don't know, and I don't know, Chase, I'm sorry, I had to step away to grab some water. You may have already mentioned this, but if you don't already know who represents you, you can enter your address. It will need to be specific because zip codes could have multiple reps or senators, but you can find out who represents you just by entering your address there.
And that is at the bottom right corner of this website right here. And it will give you all the information you need to know about your district and who represents you. There's a ton of other great information that you can find just scrolling through this. But at the end of the day, it's getting used to, I think the most important things is learning how to use those calendars because that lets you be able to participate fully. And if y'all ever have questions, you know, I know we rushed through this. You can always stop us, give us a call, send us an email, and we'd be more than happy to kind of help walk you through how to use it and go from there. Let's see. All right. Also, Linda, do you have a question?
This is Amy. We just wanted to add that at the Select Committee on CPS today, the Senate did allow virtual testimony, so that may be changing depending on the committee. Virtual
That's great
comments.
to hear.
Amy,
Yeah.
thanks for sharing that. I know that they previously would leave it to the discretion of the chairs, but I wasn't aware of any other committee doing that, so that's great.
Okay. Just wanted to let everybody know in case that seems to be a pattern for the rest of the interim.
Well, that's good to know because we had not heard that. And usually on the Senate side, even though they had the opportunity if they wanted to, none of them were using it in the past. So that's good to know. Maybe it'll help change a few things. Other than that, we just wanted to open it up, you know, for a few minutes. If y'all have any questions on interim charges, where things are heading, are there things even that aren't interim charges that worrying you right now that you think should come up in this next session? You know, we want to use these as sounding boards to know what's important to y'all. It might have been nothing on that poll we did earlier. It might be another issue you're running into. So we kind of just wanted to take some time to answer any questions or, you know, and just hear from y'all what y'all are looking at or wanting to work towards.
Chase, one thing I'll mention is Amy's comment is a good example of the interactivity that we try to do and raise your voice. So none of us knew that here, that, you know, that, and my guess is until it happened today and Amy was there to see it, nobody else knew about it. So it is really important that when, you know, you have something to add to the conversation, please tell us. And whether it's an issue where you have a certain perspective, or maybe you just heard some information, or you might have just something else, just let us know. We rely on you.
We can move on. I'm just gonna thank our sponsors really quickly that we have for the event to help us keep the doors open and keep us being able to do events like this. United Healthcare, Superior Health Plan, Amgen, AstraZeneca, Shield Healthcare, Gilead Sciences. We really couldn't do it without them and be able to do as much as we do.